Hi there! Today I've got yet another short story review, which, as the thumbnail may have indicated to you, comes from The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Tales by Vintage Classics. That's actually looks more 3D on screen than it does in it. Yeah. So I've got this massive Lovecraft book, which I have been eyeing with a certain amount of dread. I don't mind Lovecraft. There can be too much of a good thing, however, with him, I feel. And this is an awful lot of good thing. But I think I'm finally mastering the whole art of reading one short story, not starting at the front cover and ending at the last. So today's review is for the first story in this compilation, The Rats in the Walls. I've not yet mastered that thing of opening the book at random to a page and starting there. So The Rats in the Walls is a short story. It was written in 1923 and published the year after, as I believe. It's really, really well written. It actually impressed me by its literary value. Lovely literature is something that Lovecraft could do, but he didn't always, in my estimation, my uneducated estimation. And the other thing I tend to associate with Lovecraft is really purple prose, and The Rats in the Wall was far from purple, maybe a little bit lavender around the edges here or there, but in actual fact the writing was very nice. It felt older than 1920s. It felt like it was a story of ancient times, perhaps. Not that it pretends to be. But yes, anyway, so you do have a few phrases. There's, on page number 2, you've got the incendiary outrage. That's a little bit lavender in spots, you have to admit. Oh yes, the incendiary outrage that prevents our protagonist from knowing his past. So, a bit colourful, but still really beautifully written, really enjoyable to read. So, in this story, our narrator is an American who, preceding World War One, he buys his ancestral traditional family home, Exham Priory. Now we learned that before moving to the US, they were part of a peerage family called Lapoa, and the internet tells me that there is actually a peerage by that name in Ireland. They moved to America, and there was this tradition of every father, as he dies, handing a sealed envelope to his son to read about the terrible thing in their past back in the United Kingdom. However, when our narrator was young, their family home burned down. And so the letter of dire warning about horrible things never came through. It stopped dead either with him or with his father, and no one knew much about that. So anyway, he decides to connect with his heritage. He buys this Exmouth Priory, and then his son goes away to World War One, but comes back with some strange and spooky stories of the priory and the town around it, and how he himself was regarded when he was visiting there purely from the basis of having had ancestors by that name and that location. After his son dies of various injuries acquired in the war, which I think it might have taken a couple of years, this American renames himself De La Poa and moves back to the United Kingdom with the, I would say, nice intention of restoring the priory. But the locals don't like it. They don't like him being there, and they're unfriendly. And the priory itself, which he is working on, he runs into a lot of issues because of that, and also the issue of these mysterious rats in the walls. Now, as we read about these rats in the walls, I was reminded very much of The Wolves in the Walls, an excellent trade paperback that was illustrated by McKean. It's over there. I shan't mention the author because the internet's weird these days. However, the idea of all these rats in the walls, they seem like they're always there, but they can't be seen, so they're like ghost rats. Only it turns out they're actual rats. Now, in his attempt to restore this town and having a whole lot of issues with that, he ends up bringing in several investigators. Sir William Brinton is an eminent authority that comes to Delapoir's priory. Dr. Trask, an anthropologist. Thornton is a psychic investigator because they're assuming it's something psychic happening. And there's a few other ones. Yeah, anyhow. So they go on this huge expedition under the priory, and they find that there was this immense cavernous undercity beneath the priory where Lepour's far ancient ancestors did horrible, horrible things. Namely, they treated people like cattle and yeah, horrible things. And it is pretty gross, I've got to say. Lovecraft did kind of outdo the gross level with this one. It was good. I liked it. So you've got a couple of different layers to this story. You've got the layer of the rats in the wall, which seem ghostly and supernatural and uncanny. And then we find the entirely canny access to the understories of the priory, and we start discovering all these horrible, horrible things. And then Lovecraft has a bit of a twist that he ends with. So I think that one thing I thought was interesting, after writing it, Lovecraft once said that the story was suggested by a very commonplace incident, the cracking of wallpaper late at night and the chain of imaginings resulting from it. So if you are staying in a remote old building and you are suspecting that something might come out of the walls, this is not the book to take with you, and that is not the story to read. Apparently it's loosely connected to Lovecraft's Cthulhu's mythos stories, though I don't quite get it. I have read that at the end the narrator notes that the rats seem determined to lead me on, even unto those grinning caverns of Earth's centre, where Nyarlathotep, the mad faceless god, howls blindly. I can't wait for a night in the lonesome October right now. Yeah, anyway, good short story, a lot of fun, far more literary and enjoyable than I was honestly expecting, because Lovecraft can be hit or miss. This was an absolute hit. Enjoyed it a lot. Do recommend. Read it by all means, and if not, read other good books or stories. Short stories, they're a thing. They're a thing for October. Bye.